Bob, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game here in Tuscaloosa.
Hey, thank you. Good to talk with y'all.
Absolutely. Going to spend a couple of minutes here, and we've done this throughout the day, and we've still got 2 hours left, but I'm just curious if you could take us back 34 years ago today, where you were at when you heard the disappointing news that Coach Bryant had passed away.
Yeah, it's one of those things you don't ever forget. I was actually in Southern California getting ready to play in the Super Bowl, and that was there was 5 of us on that was the year Miami Dolphins and Redskins were in the Super Bowl. And, at that time, there were 5 guys on the Dolphin team that was in that game, and I remember like it was yesterday. Somebody was coming down to breakfast, and we were all as a team in breakfast, and they said that Coach Bryant had passed, and it was just a really tough situation. It was just a couple of days away from the Super Bowl and from the game, and you know, there's like a lot of folks, depending on how much something means to you, when something like that happens, you don't forget where you were.
Right now we're visiting with Bob Baumhower right here on the game in Tuscaloosa and Tide 102.9 and 100.9, the home of Alabama sports. I'm just curious, when you look back at Coach Bryant, what was it that motivated, what was it that allowed him to motivate players the way that he did? And I'm certainly you were impacted by his motivation skills.
Well, there's a lot of things, but I think what and you know, as a father and as a businessman and as a guy who, you know, tries to coach his people up, the older I get, the more I appreciate Coach Bryant. First thing is that every player got a letter from Coach Bryant before the season started. And Coach Bryant challenged you in that letter to make a plan for yourself personally first, to be the best person you could be, so that you could be the best teammate that you could be. And then it was a progression so that we would have an opportunity to play for the national championship. And it was always our goal to be the national champions when I was at Alabama. I mean, the goals were set as high as they could be. I still have the letters. Usually you got a letter in July laying out what you could expect, and some of it was about reporting to camp in the best possible physical condition you could be in, being ready mentally, being ready to be the best you could be, all the way around. And then a lot of times he would use references to teams that came before you and the things that they did that created successful seasons for them. And that was the first thing. But then when you got to Alabama, when you got there, you found out that Coach Bryant, he saw you, he paid attention to you, he knew all of his players really well, knew what made them tick. And so from a people point of view, he knew whether you needed a hug or a kick in the butt, you know, better than anybody. And then on top of that, he was one of the brightest, most organized, focused guys I've ever met. And, you know, it's amazing how much he and Coach Saban, to me, are alike. From what I can see as an outsider with Coach Saban, I don't have an inside track there, but my son was up there for a while and played for Coach Saban, and, he's a better man for it. And so he talks about it all the time, about the great principles Coach Saban, teaches. And Coach Bryant was that way. And then he was very progressive, whether it was going from a passing offense of the 60s when you had Stabler and Namath and Scott Hunter to running the wishbone. And I was with Ozzie Newsome and Richard Todd last night at a Senior Bowl function. And, Ozzie Newsome and Richard were both first-round draft picks to the pros running the wishbone because Coach Bryant passed out of the wishbone. So he was one of the only guys that ever was successful throwing the ball in a triple option offense. So you put all those factors together, and you're bound to be successful. So, pretty amazing story, and I miss him every day. Right now I'm in my office, and I have a picture of him from 1982, the poster of him that they made after he broke Alonzo Stagg's record to be the winningest coach of all time in college football, in Division I anyway. And he's just still a big part of my life.
I'm just curious, and I asked Leroy Jordan the same question. You run a very successful business, certainly the restaurants. We love the wings, a couple different places here in Tuscaloosa and throughout the state. What's your favorite wing? I'm just curious. I mean,
buffalo. I like my buffalo.
Ranch or blue cheese?
Hot.
Okay.
Blue cheese. I'm an old school guy. Listen, that's funny because, when Buffalo Wings were started, which was in 1964 in Buffalo, New York, there was only one choice. It was blue cheese. And that's how I kind of grew up on them or learned about them down in South Florida when I was with the Dolphins. But I'm a blue cheese guy. But today, ranch in the restaurants, ranch is number one as far as the dipping sauce.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, one of my favorite sandwiches, I mean, here we get to talk about food. I mean, we'll get off of Coach Bryant and start talking about food. I love the Royal Rooster. Royal Rooster is like,
that's a sandwich.
It's top notch. Is it my favorite?
That's the Rolls Royce of chicken sandwiches.
No doubt.
Or the Cadillac. I should say the Cadillac. Huh?
No, it is. I mean, I agree with you. But I'm curious, in your business practice, you ever catch yourself saying things or doing things that remind you of Coach Bryant?
All the time. In fact, one of my best reference materials, one of my favorite reference materials is a article in a magazine called Training, and a lot of HR journals use it. And back in 1996, they did an entire issue of this magazine was on the word coach, as a coach of managers and manager coach. They profiled, this is in 1996, they profiled one coach that had been studied for his successful management and coaching principles, and it was Coach Bryant. And this was 1996, 13 years after he passed. I still use that article, number one, for teaching good leadership skills and good management skills and how you get results. And just a beautiful article about the word coach, and they use Coach Bryant as an example. And I use what he taught me all the time. I mean, I tell a lot of people that, having a relationship with Coach Bryant is like a gift that keeps giving. It was so amazing how he affected, and I'm just one of how many, probably thousands of people did Coach Bryant affect positively with his leadership and teaching skills. And I think he saw himself as a teacher too.
I'm just curious, as we're less than a week away from National Signing Day, can you walk us through the recruiting process that you went through to be recruited at the University of Alabama?
You know what? I didn't get recruited. And this is another great story about Coach Bryant is I moved to Tuscaloosa as a senior in high school. I went to Tuscaloosa High School and had just started playing ball. And at the beginning of my senior year, I was not a very good ball player. And I had some size and speed and had some tools, but I didn't know what I was doing. I played for Red Lutz. I didn't get recruited by Alabama all year. And I had one scholarship offer, which was like 2 months after the season ended, and that was Vanderbilt. And I flew up to Nashville to talk to the coaches. They offered me a scholarship. I called home to tell my mom and dad that I was going to sign at Vanderbilt. And Mom said, "Don't call. The coaches from Alabama just called. They want to talk to you." So I told the coach who had played for Coach Bryant at Kentucky, the defensive line coach at Charlie Bradshaw was the coach up there at Nashville. I said, "Coach, I can't." I hung up the phone. "Coach, I can't sign. I got to go back to Tuscaloosa. Alabama wants to talk to me." He was really classy. He said, "Well, good luck. I won't be seeing you again." So I flew back to Tuscaloosa. There were coaches waiting at the airport. They said, "Do you mind talking to Coach Bryant?" I said, "No," and I hadn't talked to him the whole season. So it was just really out of left field for me. They took me over and introduced me to Coach Bryant. from the airport, and he says, "Bob, we haven't paid any attention to you, and I don't blame you if you're not interested in coming here, but I want you to play for Alabama." And what happened was he was watching film of their number one offensive line prospect, and we had played. He played for Banks and Banks High School, which is no longer there. But you saw that in the movie. Banks was the team that Woodlawn played in that movie, Woodlawn, with Tony Nathan. They had great teams back then. Tuscaloosa High played them. I had a good game against their number one offensive line prospect. Coach Bryant was watching film on that number one offensive line prospect. He saw me and said, "Well, where's this guy? He's living in Tuscaloosa." And I heard he was a little perturbed that I hadn't been recruited, and that's how I got my scholarship. But that's another testimony to how thorough Coach Bryant was with everything he did as a coach. So that's how I didn't get recruited. I was, pretty much a really lucky guy in the right place at the right time.
We're talking about Baumhower right now inside the game here in Tuscaloosa as we're talking about the legacy of Coach Bryant as we reflect on 34 years ago today, Coach Bryant's passing. And we always said a couple of days a year, September the 11th, his birthday, and then this day as we reflect on Coach Bryant. I'd like to take you to current Alabama football. As a defensive-minded guy, I'm just curious what you thought about Alabama's defense this past year.
I thought it was the best I've ever seen, ever. I hate that they didn't finish the way they would have liked to have finished, but that is a group of special young men, and they played their hearts out in that championship game. 99 plays. I mean, that's crazy in that final game, but that's the best defense I've ever seen at Alabama. 92 would probably be right behind them, the 92 defense. I was a big fan of that defense. And we had good defenses when I was there. There's been a lot of good defenses at Alabama. But I have to say that this year that defense was the best I've ever seen. Even though, we didn't get that last win like we wanted to. That's a really special group of young men. And I couldn't be prouder of them. I just wish they could have got that last win.
Have you ever defended anywhere close to 99 plays? Could you even imagine going out and defending?
Yeah, oh yeah. In the pros, man. I played in a couple of double overtime. In fact, one of the games that I played in with the Dolphins is still shown on TV as a classic, where we played San Diego in over two overtimes. And that's the game that you'll see where they have to help Kellen Winslow off the field. He had to. None of the defensive players had to be helped off the field. Some of the offensive players had to be helped off the field, if you get my drift. But
I got you.
Yeah, I'm having a little fun there. But
no, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Oh yeah, and Now, I got to tell you, it's hard to 99 plays. That's just you can't relate to how tough that would be on you, especially the intensity that they play the game today. That's just crazy to play that many plays.
Final question.
A lot of plays.
Final question is we're finishing up here with Bob Baumhower, and I really do appreciate you coming on. And I'd like to go back to the 70s because the pressure of winning a championship is very similar to what it is now. It's like a championship or bust. And, certainly 14-1 is success. You win the SEC. But, the ceiling is so high because of what you and many other players created about winning a national title. It's sort of, at times, I said it's unreasonable to think that you got to win a national title every single year. But can you talk about that pressure that was like playing back in the 70s? Because it's very similar to
and it was tough. In fact, Alabama was having some issues with finishing. When I first went there, they had lost several bowl games in a row, and there was a lot of pressure. And if you don't handle it right, it'll get to you. And I remember Coach Bryant changed some things up in 1975. We played Penn State in the Sugar Bowl, and it wasn't that. Now we went 11-1 that season, and then that's not the goal line stand Sugar Bowl with Penn State. That was 2 years prior to that. But he changed some things up, and that was actually the game where we broke the losing streak in bowl games. And he changed some things up because of the pressure, and did some things to make it a little more fun for us. And then, he went on to win, 2 more national championships in the next couple of years. But pressure does play a part in how you handle it. That's where I think Coach Saban is just absolutely amazing, unbelievable with what he does with those young guys, preparing them to be able to handle, the things that happen. And this year's is just the best example. How do you get to the national championship with a young, relatively young offense and a freshman quarterback? I mean, obviously the defense was, the bedrock of that, but we're in such good hands with the preparation and the coaching and the leadership we have right now. And I'm telling you that because I lived at Alabama when I was there, and we had very high expectations back then. It's a good question. It's tough. Pressure, high pressure, I don't think probably has changed from the 70s to now. It's something that you got to learn how to handle.
It is a monster that they've created, and certainly, I even talked to the recruits about it. I've talked to a couple this week that are committed, and they embrace it, which is good. I mean, but it's
right.
It's a pressure cooker here in Tuscaloosa.
Right. Well, everybody wants to be part of a winner, and what Coach Saban and his coaching staff and those players have created is just so special. It's amazing.
Hey, final question. I know I said that was the final question, but have you heard from Don McNeil? Don McNeil lately? I'm just one of your teammates.
Yes, I have. I just saw Don, and he's struggling with multiple sclerosis, but he's amazing. He's just as positive as can be, and is just so mentally tough, and he's getting around fine. He needs some help as far as getting around, but he's getting around fine. He's his wife is amazing, been very supportive, been married for a lot of years. He's just a class act, one of my favorite all-time people. He came in, I remember like it was yesterday, he came in with so much confidence from Atmore, Alabama, and was one of the best corners that ever played a game at Alabama, and then he did the same thing with the Dolphins. And he was part of those when we played the Super Bowl in '83. He was one of those 5 Alabama guys that were on that team.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, listen, if you talk to him,
he's special.
Send him our best, because I know that he was fighting that horrible disease, and certainly praying and thinking about Don McNeil. He's always fun to talk to. He's got a lot of pride in the Crimson Tide, as he always likes to tell us. So let him know that we ask about him if you talk to him.
I will. I'll do that.
Hey, Bob, thank you again for spending a couple of minutes with us. I really appreciate the conversation, and we've learned a lot, and I thank you again for helping us preserve the legacy of the University of Alabama.
My pleasure. Yeah, I mean, Coach Bryant was the best. I love him and miss him.